Howdy.
Howdy!
My name is Jay Spindle. I'm the team leader of Team 1, and we consist of Laura Walker, Austin Gray, Matthew Kruger, Robert Hall, and Kim Ho. And so now we'll show y'all our little video we made.
In the life of every great institution, there comes a defining moment where greatness is either grasped or lost, perhaps forever. At Texas A&M, that moment is now. We are embarking on a bold quest. It will require a shared vision, produce a shared benefit, and require a shared sacrifice by all Aggies.
One of the new major developments in College Station broke ground today.
Yeah, a very big day. Century Square is a mixed-use project that includes shopping, restaurants, hotels, and more right next to the Northgate District on University Drive.
gold. The look of it, the taste of it, the smell of it, the texture.
When we told people what we were going to do, they thought we were crazy, and that's a different conversation. It's working!
So I hope y'all enjoyed the video. So we were tasked with doing a Q&B analysis, Quadruple Net Value, and if no one really knows what that is, it's a holistic approach to assessing value of real estate by assessing the 4 different elements, which are social, cultural, environmental, economical, and sensory values. And so here's a little bit about the site. It's located on the corner of College and University, and it's about 60 acres, and it's developed to be an environment to eat, play, and work. And so here's some key players that are involved in the site. There's Gensler, STG Designs, Cadella and Weinheimer, Ward Getz and Associates, and the Valencia Group. And again, here's another infographic on the location, and you can see where it is located in respect to A&M and the Northgate District and the surrounding community. And so I'll let Austin take over with social and cultural.
Thanks, Jess. So I'll start with social and cultural value of Century Square and why it's important. If you look, there's a lot of research out there that shows that if somebody is socially involved and really connected with the community, across the board it impacts their health in a positive way. Physically, mentally, emotionally, all these different aspects. When someone feels like they belong to someone or something, they're a healthier person. And so there's some specific aspects of Century Square that I think make it a true community destination, allows some of this interaction to take place. The first of which I think is accessibility. Midway did an incredible job of just making the site really easy to get to. There's roughly 180,000 people within a 10-mile radius of the site. Bryan College Station brings in 1.5 million plus tourists and visitors every single year. And then along the site itself, on University, every single day there's roughly 70,000 cars that pass it, going up and down. And with 3 access points on University and 1 off College Avenue, I think it's really easy to say that there's not going to be any problem with people getting to the site. Next up is activities and events. Personally, I think this is going to be one of the heartbeats of Century Square, and what's going to make it a real community destination. It's going to be able to take the site and the community and really bring them together, and just really anything you can think of and imagine as far as events go, they're going to hold it there. You know, live music, food and wine tastings, holiday events, health-related activities, anything and everything you can think of, and that's really going to bring the community together. Image and comfort, I think is important. We're going to start first with image. You kind of saw in the video that Bryan College Station is a great place to live. At least most people think it is. It's one of the top places to live in America. It's one of the top college towns in America. And then if you take crime, not a big issue in this area, but I thought it was interesting. I took a crime map that I found off the College Station or police statistics, and I thought it was interesting that you can see that Century Square is already going to be located in a pretty vibrant part of the community, and a place that isn't so much is Post Oak Mall, where you see a lot of crime taking place. And it's a stark contrast in the type of sites that are there, and you can kind of see what happens when a place doesn't connect anyone or anything. And then getting the comfort. It's kind of some simple things, but I think it's really important. Just wide sidewalks and pathways. You know, plenty of shaded seating area for people to sit under. If you take wide sidewalks, you know, let's say you're walking down the pathway with your significant other next to you and you're passing someone else, you don't have to nudge them out of the way to get past them. You know, you don't have to push them into the road unless you want to. And so it's just, the comfort is there for people to relax, and it's not going to be hard for people to come together. And so I think whether you see it right away or not, when people start pouring in and the place opens up, I think these values and the social and cultural aspect of it are going to pay positive dividends to the community for a long time moving forward. So.
Awesome. So the environmental value of Century Square starts with sustainable materials, and the facades of the George and Cavalry Court hotels were utilized reclaimed brick pretty extensively. They shipped reclaimed brick up from a previous project they had taken down in Houston and shipped them up. So where the financial aspects of it are more of a push, the saving the reclaimed material from winding up in landfills is definitely a sustainable aspect. In addition to that, they were able to retain about a dozen mature oak trees throughout the property. 5 of those trees they actually needed to relocate. Another 7 or 8 they were able to protect, and they're building around them. To address energy efficiency, they utilize LEED building practices throughout all of the buildings that they're developing. While they're not seeking any sort of LEED certification at this point, it's just good business at this point. But in the future, it leaves them open to be able to seek certification through LEED Campus. In order to control costs on the interior envelopes of the buildings, they've utilized high-performance windows, sunscreens, and LED lighting. And to encourage the walkability of the site, they've reduced parking areas. Now, the heat island effect is an effect that addresses the built environment in relation to the rural environment. Radiant heat, if you're not familiar with it, radiant heat has a tendency to be absorbed and retained by man-made surfaces. And so what happens is it winds up being released very slowly over the course of the day and the night. And so built-up areas have a tendency to be significantly hotter than rural areas. So in order to combat this, Century Square, Midway, they've utilized TPO high reflective cool roofs, which is a little bit of the technology that you saw in the video, in order to reflect some of that heat off of the rooftops, which can be in excess of 50 degrees hotter than the normal air temperature. To further combat that heat island effect, they've utilized over 150 native trees that they'll be bringing in. and that will cast shade over the pavements and pavers to help shade that from the radiant heat as well. About 4%, roughly, of Century Square is dedicated to open space. I'd say about half of that is really dedicated to Cavalry Court, and that's the true green space. They'll be utilizing lawn, true lawn there. In front of the George and the small open space that they've got in 100 Park, they're utilizing artificial turf. So with the artificial turf in combination with the xeriscaping of the open space, utilizing native trees and plants, they're able to control water usage. They use that in conjunction with the automatic drip systems with rain sensors to further target specifically where they want the water so that no water is wasted. Water conservation fixtures are used throughout the interiors of the site in order to control water usage from the guests and tenants. Air quality was addressed through use of low VOC materials during the construction process. And upon completion, all the buildings will utilize high-efficiency HVAC systems. We utilize MERV filters. Their additional air quality improvements are due to the walkability of the site and incorporation of the TAMU bus stop. For those of you that are not familiar with stormwater runoff coefficients, that is essentially a way to measure on a scale of 0 to 1 the permeability of surfaces that rainwater hits. So surfaces that are less permeable, like pavement, pavers, streets, those sorts of things, are going to have a higher rating on that, approaching 1. And natural environments that are going to be covered in vegetation that can intercept rainfall and filter water are going to have a lower runoff coefficient. So these are some examples of some runoff coefficients: concrete pavement in downtown businesses approaching higher amounts. Parks and cemeteries having a lot of green space, one having much lower coefficients, and then single-family residential area is in between. So when evaluating Century Square, again, you're looking at about 96% of the site being impermeable surfaces. So that incorporates pavers, pavements, and rooftops. And roughly 4%, which is essentially the open space, takes care of the permeable surfaces. So pre-development was measured at a 0.41 on the stormwater runoff coefficient scale, and post-development is estimated at 0.88. So the post-development is going to be quite a bit higher and will produce quite a bit more stormwater runoff than the previous use of the site. So what they've done to be able to handle that is utilize the already existing north side water detention area to take care of that. So overall, the new Century Square project hits on many of the points that establish environmental value. And at this point, I'll pass the clicker over to Matthew to take you through economic.
Thank you. So the economic value of Century Square is probably going to be one of the most difficult things to define because there's nothing else like it. College Station has attempted to try many mixed-use properties in the area going back to 2009, and each one of them hasn't necessarily kicked off. But as you guys know in our visit to City Center, that Century Square is going to be something that's truly unique, and it's going to have to be defined to the community. So what I did here is I went and took all the existing mixed-use properties in College Station, and starting with the lofts at Wolfpen Creek and ending with Century Square. And what this is the CAD values according to the Brazos County Central Appraisal District. And what I attempted to do is try to find some sort of trend that was going on with the price increases every year, or the value increases, or the taxes, and I couldn't find anything. So actually, what I did determine out of here was that these numbers, especially when you're looking at North Point Crossing, it's important to remember that if you guys are looking at data in the CAD values, is that when it says the appraisal value in there, that's not really what that property's worth. Based off the numbers, and this is this is the closest comparable North Point Crossing is to Century Square, is that number is probably actually more around $77 million, and that's at a 6.5 cap. So briefly here, so the Texas travel industry contributes a lot of revenue to the state as far as taxes. And the biggest takeaway here, and that I thought was significant, is this is the change in spending since the oil crisis. And if you'll notice that the top 4 that are above Bryan College Station are all in oil-rich basins. We're the first one that is not in an oil-rich basin, but we were severely affected by the oil, by the drop in oil prices. So, you know, I don't know if you, one of the DeVaris studies that was done, it was a DeVaris retail study that was done for Century Square. And as you go through it, it was talking about a hidden economy that, in College Station. And basically, it described that with the students and the amount of visitors, and it wasn't necessarily visitors, but with the amount of students in the area that wasn't taken into the population data, that Bryan College Station could essentially support about 1 million square foot more of retail space. So that didn't add up to me. So what I did is I wound up digging into the population details a little bit more. On the next slide, I'll show College Station. But specifically, I want you to take a look at like the amount of blue-collar workers versus white-collar workers, and then the amount of education for the people in Bryan and in College Station. Typically, folks with a bachelor's degree or higher are going to be the type of customers that are going to spend more at a facility such as Century Square. And in our opinion, we don't really believe that the citizens of Bryan College Station are going to make up the bulk of the amount of consumers in this area. Therefore, travel and the visitors coming to the area are going to be the biggest asset. And as I said, here are the College Station numbers with our #1 visitor right here.
That dude just keeps appearing.
I know, he's amazing.
Where's Waldo?
Right. So we'll go into each sector briefly, but if you were to just pull the data on office leases and retail leases in the area, one of the things that it would show is that, especially with office leases, is that the gross asking, the effective rents were probably around $14 to $15 is what I was getting. But what that does is that takes into effect the area that's North Bryan, and those of you that have been here at any given length of time know that there's really not any comparables for this property in North Bryan. In fact, there's no Class A office space anywhere, true Class A office space anywhere in College Station. So the question was how to get as close as I could to that value with like a B+ type property. And so what I did is wound up coming along Villa Marina and Briarcrest corridor and basically made a line across there and said everything south is what I'm going to include in my search. And then after that, I got rid of anything that was below $20 a square foot. Current asking prices for new retail space in South College Station is going about $20 a square foot or $24 a square foot. But as you move further in towards campus, those rates go up. But what's significant is showing this $29 a square foot for office space is that Century Square can essentially ask this price and get it. They're going to get every bit of this in the area. Same thing with retail. This number, typically around campus, is going to be, in the $24 range. But this is a number that we believe that Century Square can ask and get. And one of the other things that we wanted to just to wrap this all up is that we believe Century Square is going to be a product that we're going to have to go out and get the customer. Because there's, like I said, there's no comparable here. And just in one idea of a retail attraction for this area that we thought of was the Magnolia Markets that's made famous in Waco by Chip and Joanna Gaines, is to possibly bring in something in the area like that, like a retail shop, because, it just attracts people from all over the United States. And they're going to spend money whether they have it or not, just because it says Magnolia on it. And they're going to, want to stay here in the hotels. Another thing with office lease, one of the ideas that we had for the area was for the oil companies. The major oil companies in Houston all have contingency operations centers that they have to set up whenever there's hurricanes and things like that that are on the coast. There are already a couple of places here in College Station or companies that are operating contingency operations facilities, but we specifically think that Century Square would be perfect for them because they can stay in the hotels, those employees can stay there, and then eat here and still work and move along. But overall, we believe that it's going to be a great product, but it's going to take some work to educate the consumer. And now I'll pass it on to Cynthia.
About the sensory value of Century Square. Any of you who have been to City Center, the similar project by Midway, and you feel something. You feel something. What is it when you fall in love with something and you obsess with a place? What is it? What is it that's going on? Because all your senses, or most of your senses, was triggered, and because of that, when they create walkability, activated public space, and well facilitated, they trigger all of our senses: visual, smell, taste, touch, and sound. And talking about like how to create it, if we have learned from our textbook that whenever your senses is triggered, is usually because of 4 keys urban images, and that is architecture, green space, walkways, and water settings, and they incorporate everything in their design. And we will talk about architecture. There's the George that they incorporate the refined, rustic design that embrace the architectural and mechanical history of Texas A&M, and why Cavalry Court is about the tradition of Corps of Cadets of Texas A&M as well. So everything is about context sensitive, which is a big thing. So when your center is triggered, they have large community lounge area, they have flexible meeting in advance area that you can see, like that is the George, and they do have water features as well. There's free water features with central flame, and there's free swimming pool. That I highlighted the fountain with central flame, that you can see the demonstration right there. And that is Cavalry Court, and they do have like their gold member right there.
That's a bed bug.
And why is it so big about walkability, about that design that we learn about? They actually use that model of transit-oriented development, TOD design, and that is 4Ds that we learn about. That is distance. Distance is a big thing. Their development is not too big, not too small. So the walk distance is within half a mile or a quarter of a mile. So it's super walkable. It's super walkable. And the number 2 is, diversity. 4D. Diversity, distance, density, and design. So everything is incorporated into one. And coming up next this project is super, like DAD compliant. And you can see right there. All the yellow part, that is the seating areas, and right here, the curved rounds with detectable pavers. And if you don't know what detectable paver is, I suppose like Melanie might know. Melanie, of course she does. That is the pavers that has some little dots that guide the wheelchair. That everyone should notice, because it's and they have bicycle racks, so it promotes sustainability and it promotes walkability as well. And it triggers all our senses. And next is their activated area, public area, and touch and feel is kind of big deal to them. So that's why like 85% of the public area of 2 acres has textured paving. And one more important thing is that they are very respectful of their pedestrian, because as they stated, there's no back of house, which mean they do arrange their trust pickup hours that does not intervene with their pedestrian hours, active hours. And next is, about that TOD that I was talking about. Within half a mile or a quarter of a mile, there is 6 restaurants, and when this project is done, there will be at least 20 tenants, restaurant, and there's diversity. They have brewery, they have winery, they have fine dining, they have everything, everything, and they're covering like 150,000 square feet. And every single restaurant will have a patio, like an outdoor dining with shaded. And that's all about it. And the nearest one that we have here is really near. I think that adds something that, because TOD is kind of like a grouping part. Like they bring everything together as a group. And so we have some adjacent development that can help promote this project. And I will leave the conclusion to our team leader. Thank you.
So we can all really tell that College Station is changing. No matter where you go, you can't miss the construction. And what Midway is introducing is a new concept that hasn't been seen in town before. And so they're integrating Aggie values and traditions into it, which is really targeting the Aggies that are visiting, and with their participation, they have great potential to become successful. And so here are some recommendations that we came up with as a team through research and stuff, of maybe questions of why it wasn't incorporated, or, it's understandable if it was too expensive, but something we would recommend was coordinating with A&M and getting some events rolling with some students. That would really get populations out there to experience this new development. Bike lanes aren't a big thing around the development. They might come in later and put bike lanes going into campus, but that would be really useful in the accessibility standpoint. Thirsty concrete or porous pavement technology. We thought of that because every student driver, most college drivers are terrible drivers when it comes to rain, and you can see tons of wrecks. That would be something to incorporate, but it's an additional cost. So there's also a sound buffer along University Drive. We think that sound might be an issue of the traffic going by, especially during peak hours. And they really don't have to market this to the BCS area, because everyone looks for the experience to go out and have a nice meal outside, or just experience an urban place. And there's not very many places in town that have those, besides some of the local parks. But there's going to be a ton of students going over there to experience stuff like this. And so now I'll open it up to questions, comments, and feedback. If anyone has any.
All right, so before we start, let's give them a round of applause.